I would say that he was a child who was being humiliated and tortured by patterns of behavior in the system of racism, white supremacy, that his parents, mixed-race parents, one Asian and one supposedly white, were apparently not paying any attention whatsoever to. You see, they were into a denial of racism, white supremacy, certainly in denial as it was impacting their son, but they had their son in predominantly white situations where children were bullying him or mistreating him because he was not white. This is standard operating behavior in the system of racism, white supremacy. And so my question is, in any way, apparently from what the parents are saying, the father is willing to call the son racist, blaming him for being racist, as opposed to looking at and confronting what are the attitudes on the part of people who classify themselves as white towards non-whites. And this would be inclusive of children in those families. How do they? I mean, that's what the system of racism, white supremacy is. When Elliot spoke about he was very young when he realized there was a hierarchy. No, when he was very young, he realized there was a system of racism, white supremacy. White on top, non-white on the bottom, non-white being mistreated. Now, I say that the parents are to blame, but see, we have a lot of mixed-race situations going on now, more than ever before. And you can call this mixed-race insanity, where there's absolutely no preparation for the child who is going to be non-white, what that child is going to be experiencing, as the parents are in a denial of racism, white supremacy, and therefore, because they are in denial, they are not acting so as to protect the child that they brought into the world. See, it's like the mixed-race couples who have a black child and the white mother doesn't know what to do with the black child's hair. So the hair is standing up all over the child's head, looking like something from another planet. The parents are in denial. They've got a non-white child in a system of racism, white supremacy. For example, I think President Obama is unprepared for the level of hostility that he is experiencing in the system of racism, white supremacy. I truly think that he's unprepared because he had a white mother. You see, so yes, in other words, does he know there's yes, he knows there's racism. But does he know the depth? Did anything prepare him for what he is experiencing? The 24/7 demeanment, the refusal 90% of the time, whether in print or vocally, to say President Obama. No, we are not going to respect him. And even if the country, going back to, even if we destroy the country, we are not going to respect him. I truly don't. I look at his eyes sometimes and I think that he's completely unprepared for the level of hostility that he has to encounter. You see, no matter whether he turns left or right, it's wrong. And so the denial of racism and white supremacy is essential to its maintenance. The more it's denied so that people can't lay it out on the table and dissect it and understand it. If it can be dissected and understood like we're attempting to do in this program, then that's one thing. But if it's denied and no, it doesn't exist, then let's talk about anything other than system of racism, white supremacy. Let's call it Jim Crow. Let's call it, let's just talk about slavery in the abstract. But don't talk about system as it relates to white survival on the planet, local, national, global. See, even the big immigration discussion, I maintain until proven otherwise that remove the blacks and bring in the browns because they are less of a color threat to white genetic survival. So we can, genocide the blacks for now. We genocided the Native Americans. We can genocide the blacks. Push them out of the urban centers, take away political power, try again to destroy their right to vote, and we'll pay their leaders so that their leaders won't talk about racism and white supremacy, so they will not be understanding what is happening to them. See, impeach him, sue him, tear him down, beat him up. Do you see? It's no different than the experience that Elliot Rodgers experienced in the school. But his parents are saying, we won't look at it. His Asian mother, we won't look at it. White father, we won't look at it. So that he's being beat up without any protection. It's no different than a child being sexually abused in a family, and the adults don't want to look at it, and so then the child is traumatized. Elliot Rodgers could have qualified for post and continuous traumatic stress. Post and continuous traumatic stress, being in an environment where he is being beat up effectively, psychologically, by racism, white supremacy, and in which he had no protection, no understanding. And for him to have a father who produced films about children killing other children, is that right? His father, livelihood is producing films about destruction of human life. So his son is sitting there in the house, and the father's talking about, I guess, at some level, or showing what he's producing. And so his son learns the destruction of human beings. And nobody pulls that together. Barbara Walters, Jewish, she has a history of her people being destroyed based on racism, white supremacy. So she doesn't see it. She doesn't talk about it with Mr. Rodgers. So it could be Planet of the Insane. And for the father to say he was jealous of me, as opposed to a father saying, I know that I am white in a system of racism, white supremacy. I married a non-white female, and so my son was non-white and would be looked at as other than white in the environment that I am in. And so because I understand racism, white supremacy, I'm doing everything to help my son understand racism, white supremacy as a system, how destructive it is, and teaching him to value himself as a non-white person, perceived as a non-white person by people who classify themselves as white. So, son, I love you, I value you, I respect you. You are non-white. You don't look like me because your mother's genetic material is dominant to mine. I am a genetic recessive. You are a genetic dominant, like your mother. Now, that would be one type of parental education.